There is nothing magical about slow repetitions, and you can easily hit your genetic limit without ever doing them. Though, it would be untrue for me to state that there are no benefits. So in this video, I came up with 3 reasons why you may want to consider slowing things down. First being an obvious point, proper form, or might I say, perfection. How many guys do you know that are jerking weights around, bouncing barbells off their chest, or turning isolation movements into compounds, where other muscle groups are starting to take over? Ugly, disgusting form that you probably see in the gym fail. I'm sure you all have many stories to share, and you know what? Put in the comment section, but that's beyond the scope of this video. I can't even cover all the stupidity that exists out there. Now, obviously, you can still have clean form while going fast, but an easy fix for many people is just controlling it. So what you'll find is people who slow things down tend to feel the muscles a little bit better. They get greater mind-muscle connection, which again is not due to the tempo itself. It's the fact that they're actually focusing on the form, which is the fundamental problem. That's why I'm saying there's nothing magical about slow reps. You might even argue that going faster provides more benefits because you can recruit more motor units and stuff like that. I would say control the eccentric, explode the concentric, but it doesn't have to be super slow. As long as there's no bouncing around, you're fine. You really have to be tight while eliminating momentum. Take the barbell row, for example. If you raise your torso up and down constantly, or you're going at a very fast pace, that might lead to doing cheat rows, which I'm all for. But if your objective is to do a strict row, maybe if you slow things down, you'll be able to lift far less weight, not because of the tempo necessarily, but due to not cheating. And the same can be said for touch and go. In fact, the stretch reflex still remains when you do a pause repetition. So what's one of the features that distinguishes that weight difference? It's the bounce. And slower form prevents you from doing that. And I think that's also one of the reasons why people get benefits from TUT type training. They're slowing the form down, and even though it might not be full range of motion, they're still tight and they're still close enough. And it beats the alternative, which is swinging and jerking and doing all these things that doesn't really help with your muscle gains. So form is definitely the key component. And what I've recognized over the years is that this cannot be ignored. You don't need perfection, but it's got to be as good as possible. When I look at advanced lifters or just elite benchers, etc., they look extremely solid and never compromise that. In fact, bad form is seen as a muscle weakness that needs to be corrected. So if for you, slower form allows you to master your form and use that as a transitioning strategy to something greater, or just for some movements you go slow, some fast, I see nothing wrong with that if we're talking about executing the movement right. So I know that's a super basic point, but please don't click off this video yet. I'm gonna dive into more crazy stuff now. The real main benefit is the fact that you are overcoming the biological law of accommodation. Remember, there's 2 ways to do this. One is through modification of parameters, sets, reps, percentages, etc. And the second is through rotation of the movement. Well, what's another thing you could do to change a parameter? Modify tempo. In other words, that is a progression strategy. If you're doing 3 sets of 10 with 225, but you're doing 1 second up, 1 second down, but then 3 months later you progress to doing 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up, but the same weight is being used, well, you can say there's more time detention for one, but the main benefit is you got freaking stronger. And that cannot be denied. You're doing the same weight, but with slower form, which is much harder. You're under the barbell for much longer, and you can't be as explosive as well. And this can be applied to many different exercises, especially if you're limited in weights, or even if you're doing body weight training. I find this to be very valuable when you're doing push-ups, especially the harder variations, like pseudo-planche push-ups. It's great for pull-ups. If you don't want to add weight, you can do a 5 sets of 10, but now you're slowing things down. So again, there's nothing magical. I need to stress this point, is that you are overcoming the law of accommodation through variation. Just like how it's not the same as doing a pause rep versus a touch and go, I would make the same case for tempo type training. And for isolation movements, you're going to be lifting even less weight. Your curls might go from 45 pounds to 30. And that's not an over-exaggeration. For those who are snapped up or wish not to lift super heavy, this is a great way of doing it. It's harder. So you can treat this as a bodybuilding tool where you're still going to failure, or at least getting very close to it, but you're not compromising your muscle results. As long as the proper intensity is there and you're hitting the right amount of sets and reps and frequency, etc., you should have no problems gaining muscle mass. And that's really what I see this for, as a bodybuilding strategy of getting more or less weight specifically for those who are snapped up or just don't really care for going heavy. Now, of course, you're gonna get stronger over time. So even if your weight must be reduced from 30 to 20 pounds on, say, an extension, eventually you'll be back at those 30s. But understand that if you were to speed up that tempo, you can probably do 40 plus. So I wouldn't even say that you're necessarily compromising your strength gains, just that it's not optimal. But you know what I mean, right? There's a psychological element to this. And for older lifters especially, I can see why you'd want to do this. Or maybe you don't care about the numbers anymore. Though a counter argument to this would be that slowing things down actually swells up the connective tissue more and more. That's why those who do this type of training get more sore, especially when coupled with low frequency systems. So I'm not a huge fan of it myself, and I don't find it to be that impressive, to be honest with you. I'd rather get over speed eccentrics or just controlled in general, and I don't really see a merit to doing more than, say, 5 seconds. The max I would do is 3 to 5 on the way down. And for the positive, I don't really see the point in doing really slow reps. Again, we could talk about progression, but to me, it's just whatever, right? So again, it's about personal preference. It's about how you want to train. But you can argue that because of tighter form, lower weights, etc., you are preventing injuries to a certain extent. But to me, that comes down to the overall program itself. Like how well you're managing volume and intensity, your frequency, rotating movements, etc. It's not necessarily the tempo that's going to ensure that. It's just another checkbox that you're getting here. So that's what you can really expect from tempo training. Using good form, overriding the law of accommodation through variation, and arguably getting more or less weight. Nothing magical. It is what it is. Hope you guys enjoyed the segment. And let me know if you can identify with some things that I talked about today. So I'm done talking. See you in the next video.